GM, good morning. Thanks for having us.
So let's just dive right in. Are NFTs dead?
No.
Not yet. They're doing just fine.
In seriousness, I mean, we saw, I think a week or two ago, there was a Bloomberg headline, and these things rocket around crypto Twitter and the rest of the internet pretty fast. And it said, NFT volume is down 97% from the peak. And, we can nitpick over, I think there were a couple data dashboards that they left out. But, this is kind of the narrative lately, especially from people who obviously it confirms what they already believed. They already thought NFTs were stupid. But what does each of you make of the current kind of vibe in crypto and NFT land because of the bear market?
I mean, you guys have been in crypto long enough to know that this is kind of just what like normie land says about anything related to crypto every single cycle, right? I mean, in 2017, you saw the exact same sentiment. And you could, I think, trace this back to like every advancement in technology going back probably to the wheel. Someone was probably just like, yeah, fuck that thing. I mean, like it's kind of just par for the course. All of the Yuga properties are continuing to do pretty well as far as I can tell. Weirdly enough, I just saw a stat the other day that like Yuga itself, the NFTs accommodate for like 48% of the total NFT market, which is a little, no pressure. But no, I think the market's still doing very well. I mean, there's obviously like, a lot of the projects that didn't have great teams, thoughtful utility roadmaps attached to them, et cetera. I think those projects are obviously falling out of favor for probably good reason. The same way that like Dentacoin in 2017 didn't really continue to do well.
Dentacoin.
You remember that?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like the same, right? It's like, yeah, in every bubble, there's going to be Dentacoins of the world, and there's going to be Bitcoins and Ethereums and Solana, and it's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, speaking of Yuga having such a big market share of the NFT landscape, what are your thoughts on this idea of decentralization that everyone in crypto, opines about and says is very important? We need decentralization. We can't have too many singular companies holding such a large share of the pie, and obviously Yuga is taking up a lot of that landscape right now. How do you guys reckon with that?
Yeah, I mean, we want to be good stewards. We want everybody to win. And that, that's really how we think about it. In terms of decentralization, we also think a lot about ownership and about trying to use our projects to create sandboxes for other people to participate in. That was part of the thinking behind the approach that we've taken to our commercial rights or IP rights. If you own a Bored Ape, you can essentially do whatever you want with that Bored Ape. And that's obviously, as we acquired CryptoPunks and Meebits, that was integral to that acquisition for us, that we would decentralize the IP in that way. And I think that helps create a really vibrant ecosystem where it's, it's easy to claim that Yuga is this monolithic thing, when in actuality, there's a lot of organic energy coming up in a groundswell from the community constantly. There's entire projects like Jenkins the Valet and other things that are, have no relationship to us, no formal relationship to us whatsoever, except that they were born out of the community and now they're off to the races doing their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right way to look at it, that we've decentralized the intellectual property itself, and that, on day 2, I was watching people figure out how to commercialize their ape and create derivatives and sell artwork around their ape. And now flash forward to today, almost 2 years later, where you have Snoop Dogg and his son Champ creating multiple different brands based on the IP of their ape. You have Jenkins the Valet. You've got people like Non-Fungible Films creating whole narrative worlds around it. You've got Seth Green utilizing his ape in an upcoming TV show. I mean, we have nothing to do with any of it, right? They don't need our permission. So in that sense, it's a permissionless system.
Let me ask you guys a little bit more about that. When you say what's great about it is if you own your ape, you can do whatever you want with it. Is the inverse also true? I mean, are you guys, or is Yuga also interested in eventually helping owners enforce when non-owners use it? Is that part of the IP rights? I always famously use the example from, I'm aging myself, but frat t-shirts used to be a big thing, and they always used like Bart Simpson or Calvin and Hobbes or Snoopy, right? And technically, like, that's not allowed, but everyone kind of does it, and no one really cares. What's the kind of route for an ape owner to do if someone puts their ape on a t-shirt without asking?
We want to be advocates and help the community in any way that we can. And so this is obviously a very nascent space. This is a nascent system. I don't think there's like a silver bullet answer here, except that we are very actively talking to people in the community and want to be sensitive to any kinds of issues that they bring up in that whole space.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think because it is so early, a lot of people are trying to figure out exactly what they own, right? And it might be a good way to ask you guys, what are some of the earlier collections or projects that influenced you? I mean, it's funny for us at Decrypt. I mean, I think of the boom before the boom as having started with NBA Top Shot. And of course, now things have really evolved since then. But the thing about Top Shot that I think was smart, of course, maybe the true crypto, degens didn't love this, but it was sort of like a non-crypto way to get into NFTs. I mean, you could pay with your credit card. You could, I think there were people buying them who never had any idea how NFTs actually work or that they were interacting with blockchain. But now things have evolved from there. Is that something that you think is going to have to kind of advance further, the understanding of, what are you really getting? What are you really buying?
I think so, to some degree. I mean, to answer your first question, though, the things that inspired us, we got into crypto in 2017, Greg and I. And my first exposure to NFTs was, I think, the same as Greg's, which was through CryptoKitties. There was that sort of like that moment where it just sort of took over crypto Twitter for a little while. And I bought a few CryptoKitties. And, it was exciting being a part of that, but it didn't feel super collectible at first. The model didn't quite make sense. It felt more like a technological game or some kind of experiment, much the same as CryptoPunks did at the time. And I don't think many people, there were some who had the foresight, but certainly Greg and I didn't have the foresight to see the possibility for utility with NFTs in 2017. And then, I think Top Shot definitely played a role in this last bull run, in this last sort of like explosion. But the project that captured our attention, and I'm not saying like we're super fans of it or anything, but the project that captured everyone's attention was a project called Hash Masks. And mostly it was because it was the first time since CryptoKitties that I'd really seen crypto Twitter specifically get involved in NFTs again. And the project made like $10 million. And it's sort of like, but for guys like Greg and I, who weren't the best traders, who weren't the best investors, who weren't engineers, we were just creative writers, right? That was our background. We were like, oh, this is an opportunity for us to sort of like do what we're good at, tell a story, art direct, build communities that, you don't necessarily need to know a ton about the technology to get involved in the space. And it seemed to us more like suddenly a canvas had been created and that we could start creating on it.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
Medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that a little bit deeper. I know you guys both did MFA programs. I also did an MFA program. I studied fiction writing. And so I sort of am coming at this from like a writer angle. I would love to know that like now you guys are these tech founders of this $1 billion company. Does this MFA experience play into your day-to-day at all? Like, do you feel like it does, or one day you guys just getting ready to go like, retire on an island and write some novels,
I think this has become our novel. It's so funny when we first got interviewed by the New Yorker, and you can relate to this as an MFA student, I'm sure. It was like we were being interviewed by the New Yorker, and we both took a moment midway through the interview, and we were just like, can you believe that this is why we're finally getting in the New Yorker? Not as a poet, not as a short story writer, but for Bored Apes. It was a very funny moment for us. By just for clarification, I didn't do an MFA. I dropped out of college because I got sick. But I was well on my way to getting an MFA. Greg got an MFA in poetry. I think it informs everything we do, so much so that very recently I hired one of my mentors from college who taught me everything I know about writing. I think it informed the pressure cooker situation of a short story workshop in particular for me. Taught me everything I know about how to critique art and how to think through making art better, making creative ideas better. The discipline that was involved helps me on a day-to-day basis for sure.
Yeah, I think the DNA of just beating up an idea for hours and hours with friends, trying to figure out what like the right path is, that's something that was, core to our relationship as friends and has been extremely core to our relationship as founders and frankly also something that we were scared about as the company was going to scale. Like looking back, if there's anything I regret, I think it's that we didn't hire more sooner. In January of this year, we were like 11 people. Today we're 85, probably going to be over 100 by the end of the year. And that's great. And the thing I'm most proud of is that like the creative energy in the company has flourished and been amazing. But it's something we were really protective about because we thought that's where the magic was, that like, hey, this is only working because like Wylie and Greg are on the phone for 6 hours a day, like beating up an idea of like what the next cool fun thing would be. And like, how do you like formalize that? Because while we're this tech company in a way, this blockchain company, what we really are is we're like, more like a lifestyle brand or a storytelling company. And we're kind of publishing to the blockchain and trying to be very acutely aware of how people interact with things and not so much, tech for tech's sake.
Yeah, we're very much a creative first company. And to add on to what Greg says, I think it was a lot my fault that like not wanting to expand the company sooner. We that being protective of a creative process is difficult when you grow and scale a thing. It's almost as if like every time the company grows by another half, it's like everything kind of starts to break down. And, we're first time founders, right? And so we're learning that lesson as we go. And it took us a while to trust others, not just from the creative lens, but from the business development sense or from the partnership sense or anything, even social media. It was like everything at first was so delicate to us, and it's become less so as we learned to trust others in the process. And part of that is that we brought on a wonderful CEO, my old friend, Nicole Muniz, to come help us run this. And then she brought in people from her agency, Something New, in Aquahara, and things have kind of blossomed since then.
So is that 80 to 100 people at Yuga Labs by the end of the year?
Oh, yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. I think over 100.
Over 100, yeah.
Yeah. I imagine a good portion of those people aren't even working on the apes, right? I mean, you've got punks, you've got whatever else you guys up to.
We've created buckets around punks, Meebits. Otherside is a massive project. We're developing blockchain games. We have a team now, which was the hardest to build out, actually. It was the BAYC team, which is now coming together as we speak and is doing amazing work. And then just all of the nuts and bolts and everything in between, everything from social media to PR to a bunch of process producers, project managers, the massive creative studio that we're building. We're building a team of creative technologists who are just kind of like the new, I've been calling them the Yuganeers, but they're, like the Imagineers. They're just kind of like our creative ninjas, It's a terrible name. I know. I don't know what to do. I just keep thinking it's funny. But yeah, I mean, we're doing so much, and it's funny. Like everyone's always like, how do you prioritize? And it's like, I don't prioritize. We do everything all at once. There's too much opportunity. There's too much fun. Everything else. It's so much fun to just like, especially as a founder, I get to like go in on everything and just like weigh in a little bit here and there all day long.
It's talking about it as a business and you guys as business people. I mean, it's a good segue. I wanted to ask about when you were, quote unquote, doxxed a while back, and when they released your identities. Obviously, when we introduced this, I said your names. You guys are good with it now. You guys have your real names displayed as part of your Twitter names. I noticed today. Looking back on it now, and obviously you've grown comfortable with being out there. We're seeing your faces. Why did that matter so much? Why did that seem like such a big deal at the time?
I think the journalists are the ones who blew that kind of out of proportion more than anything else. I mean, look, if you've been in crypto, and you guys have for a long time, pseudo-anonymity is par for the course, right? I mean, it's like every crypto project starts with a pseudo-anonymous founder, frankly. We still don't know who made Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know his identity. I mean, it's like, this is just part of the landscape. I think at the time we wanted to be pseudonymous. The government knew who we were. Our employers knew who we were. Our partners knew who we were. We were in Zoom meetings showing our faces all day long. And I think we just kind of wanted to come out and reveal ourselves on our own terms. Of course, a journalist felt that differently, that no one running a massive company should be allowed to be pseudo-anonymous, and I guess that's their prerogative.
How about you, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty well said. I will say, as time has gone on, it's been amazing to be able to just meet people, give them a hug at Ape Fest. Like the first Ape Fest was pretty surreal for us, where we were completely pseudonymous. And yet we were throwing a party for 2,000 people in a warehouse and had 1,000 people in a yacht, and we're just hanging out. Basically, I was giving out wristbands, I was people thought I was an intern basically, and it was great. I will say, I think it's the thing that's taken the most adjusting to is just that we're first-time founders. We're not from Silicon Valley. We don't have, I was a book editor and a poet, and so it's just a big change of pace for me.
Yeah, I mean, it really has been a blessing and a curse ultimately. I mean, it was bound to happen eventually. We just hoped we had been able to do it on our own terms, but yeah, it's been getting at as Greg said, at the first Ape Fest, which we're 4 guys figuring out how to throw together a festival that we could cryptographically verify apes to come in and experience a free event where you're going to see incredible talent such as the Strokes and Little Baby and Beck play at a warehouse in Brooklyn, and then on a massive yacht in New York City. Flash forward where no one knew us, and it was kind of fun, sneaking up to people that I'd seen from social media and be like, "Hey, I'm Gordon," and then just have a big hug in a moment. But then flash forward to this year where we threw Ape Fest at Pier 17, where we had 4,000 people a night for 4 nights in a row. And the moment I walk out, people know what I look like, and so line forms, and I get to hug and meet everybody, and I literally just didn't get to move the entire time I was there, because that's how many people just wanted to come and say hi to me, and I was all too happy to do it. It was the most incredible experience of my life, just getting to meet all these people that were part of the club that I helped create. It was incredible. Ultimately a blessing.
Yeah, I was wondering, so in a previous interview, Greg had said that you guys sort of view the Bored Apes as kind of like Outcasts. And I was wondering, given the success of Yuga and how you guys are sort of like celebrities at events now, do you think of yourselves as Outcasts, or how has the way that you guys view yourselves changed, given all of Yuga's success?
I don't know. I mean, I think, calling them Outcasts is one way to describe it. We designed the apes to be irreverent and kind of it was kind of like we were thinking of Andy Warhol Factory Party from 1969, right? We were deeply inspired by traits from old school hip hop and the Velvet Underground, and just kind of weird and quirky and irreverent. I wanted them to look like hanging out they were hanging out at the greatest punk club ever, from 1972, right? Right in that era, and that's kind of the style. Yeah, we designed the club to be a ramshackle, a roadhouse kind of place in the middle of the Everglades, and we wanted to have that feel, and just because that was the kind of club that we ourselves would have dreamed to want to be a part of. I do see us still as a little punk rock, to be honest. I don't know, and it's kind of lame to admit that, but I don't. I think people coming into the space see the $4 billion valuation and the headlines that we seem to garner at every twist and turn, and think that we must have been I don't know, Silicon Valley bros who knew what they were doing. We had no idea what we were doing, and still at this opportunity, at every day we're still learning how to do everything. It's all new to us. I kind of view us as a garage band that kind of made it, and we're still just trying to keep that authenticity. And frankly, I'm a little precious about it. I try and, for instance, we don't do a lot of PR, as you're probably aware. We don't do a ton of interviews. We're pretty selective about that, just because to me that's just a little bit too rock star. Let's try and keep it as much of a organic, homegrown thing as possible.
Greg, still feel like Outcasts?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't think that we feel like Outcasts, but I think that what was core, again, in the early design of Bored Ape Yacht Club was not taking ourselves too seriously. just having that sense of playfulness about the club, and that's still something that I think we want to hold on to very closely with any of our upcoming activations for BAYC, especially. It's like I want to impress and do show off technical prowess that we can do now with a bigger team, but also remind people like, hey, this is a pretty ridiculous club here, and we're just here to have fun.
Yeah, one thing I keep hearing you guys kind of harp on is the idea of it being a story, and it was storytelling, and I know that's what Otherside is about too. I'm glad that Kate asked about your origin as writers. Do you feel a little bit like, as the collection has gotten really big and prominent, that has it gotten away from that? I mean, there are a lot of people in it who probably bought it because they wanted the price to go up. There are kind of flippers who have helped make NFTs big. Now, of course, people who are in the space say it's way beyond that now, and it's not about the speculation, but there are those people in the space. So has it gotten away at all from that kind of initial dream?
I mean, it's that way with every collectible market, right? I mean, it's like you could have the same thing occur in Magic the Gathering cards, right? There are people who are going to want to just buy and flip those Magic the Gathering cards every time there's a new release and try and get the rares. And then there's the people who actually just want to participate in the community, who actually want to experience the thrill and the fun of the game itself, right? And not to say that Board Yacht Club is a game, but we are releasing games, right? It's like there's people who come into the space for the right reasons, and there's people who come into the space for a bunch of other reasons. But we are always building out everything for the person who bought an ape for $200, frankly, right? It's the person who is still holding on to this day, and we're always thinking about that person when we think about the utility and the things that we're going to be providing.
Yeah, and speaking of the other side, I mean, let's talk about the other side. I am a gamer. I have played a lot of FPS games, RPGs, things like this. And I'd love to know, who is the other side being designed for, and where are we with this other side metaverse right now?
Absolutely. I think what really excites us in general about the possibilities between blockchain gaming is ownership, and the fact that so many of the most brilliant games that have come out in the last 20 years have come from modding communities, from people building on top of things. You have Warcraft 3, a pseudonymous developer named IceFrog or whatever creates what is now thought of as, it was Dota All-Stars, now Dota, and obviously inspired MOBAs like League of Legends and everything else. You have amazing games coming out that are built on top of Skyrim. And a lot of these people have had to go elsewhere to find value for their contributions. They, become content creators on YouTube, and it's like smash subscribe to my channel or support my Patreon or do something else. And the idea of building an open metaverse and a platform for UGC content where people can build on top and own the content that they're creating is incredibly powerful. And also, though, I think giving somebody just a blank space is never as engaging as when there's a bit of story, when you're showing them, how to do something right first, and engaging them on a more like emotional level. And so with Otherside, frankly, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to do both. We want to tell an amazing story, about what the fuck these Coda things are and this strange world that we found ourselves teleported into. And we also want to give a space for people's creativity to build on top of and enjoy. And part of that too was, we didn't want to do something where it's just like, hey, this is a Web 2 game, something like you've seen before, and now we're just throwing blockchain elements into it, whatever. There's some, it's a Web 2 game, but you own your assets. That's cool too. But what's more special to us was to do something that hadn't been done before. And that's where we're really proud of, for example, our first trip that we had a couple of months back, where we had 4,500 concurrent users in this space, and just this like sheer density of people in the metaverse is really special to us. And we are going to keep creating more experiences like that for our communities. Are, obviously, as it stands, it's other deed holders, and there's a lot of overlap there with people who own other Yuga and broader NFT projects. That's the core community that we're building out for right now, but the metaverse should be for anyone, and it should open up, and anyone should be able to participate, and that's the plan for over time.
Yeah, and jumping off that, I know like other companies sort of have different stances on NFTs and games, and so it sounds like you guys are trying to do something that is a lot more like user focused, where like you said, like users can build in the other side, as opposed to what we're sort of seeing with other companies like Minecraft, where they have banned NFTs and basically said, we don't actually want you guys to be building any sort of NFT layers on top of our software. So are you guys really just trying to create like an open sandbox where people can really sort of create their own economies, or is Yuga going to be controlling the ultimate like overarching economy?
The former. I think we're trying to create a giant sandbox. I think one way of thinking about it is sort of semi-decentralized, but absolutely Web3 native Roblox is one way of looking at it. But obviously with much better looking and geared for a slightly more adult audience. I don't think we're doing. I think we're doing things kind of in contrast to the way a lot of gaming companies would do things. Starting with like the iterative development of the game itself. Typically, what you would see is you'd maybe get a teaser. A few months later, you get a trailer. 3 years later, you get a game. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. At every step of the way, we designed this so that there would be these trips, these experiences where the holders themselves would be able to be sort of like the testers of the world. And they would be able to sort of not only be a part of the iterative journey of the development, and we're calling these people who own another Deep Voyagers, but they would have early access to things. They would have early access to the modeling and the ODK and the ability to start creating in these worlds. And so co-develop the universe with us. So starting from there, and to me, that was the only authentic way to actually build a real metaverse, right? Like the idea of like a metaverse that's like a walled garden that's just like built for you. And it's like, okay, here it is. And now you're just going to get the features that we give you over time. That's just like another Web 2 MMORPG, maybe with VR goggles. I mean, like it didn't seem all that innovative to me. I like the idea of bringing the community along for the ride.
Are you guys big sci-fi guys? I mean, you're writers. Are you big readers? Were you influenced by Snow Crash?
I mean, we've never read Snow Crash, actually. Of course, we know about it. We know that that's where where the term metaverse comes from. Nicole Muniz, our CEO, she's a much bigger sci-fi reader than we are. We're more like we're not really genre guys. We're more like literary fiction kind of dudes.
I asked you guys a little bit about flippers and the speculation in the market. Let's talk about regulation. It's been a big topic with every guest we've had on the pod. In your case, it almost applies equally well because we have people on and we ask, the SEC and Gary Gensler appear to think that almost everything is a security. There was that report about the SEC investigating Yuga and Bored Apes. Do they think those are securities? What do you make in general of how regulation is going to affect this space? Because I've been doing this a long time, and I remember the ICO boom. And then it kind of passed. And now it looks to me like it's the same era again, where they're going after both new, recently launched tokens, in some cases, maybe NFTs, and also still old years ago ICOs. It's kind of everything. But at the same time, you ask people and they say, well, we're optimistic because maybe we'll get some type of crypto law and clarity. But is that something that you have to spend much time thinking about as you grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, it's not that surprising given everything else that's going on. As you mentioned, that NFTs are getting looked at. Policymakers want to know more about Web3 across the board. It's new, it's uncharted waters. And at Yuga, we take our position as industry leaders seriously, and we look forward to the opportunity to work with the rest of the industry and policymakers to help shape the ecosystem. Yeah,
great answer.
It's also part and parcel of a larger thing, which is there's a lot of schadenfreude out there when it comes to NFTs, and there are just NFT haters. I wanted to ask you guys, whether that's something that you try and ignore, have noticed over time. I mean, in some ways, the apes became, I would argue, the poster child of all NFTs, at least the PFP, profile picture boom. And of course, it's not just apes. There's doodles and cats and punks and all these other collections. But, in some ways, the people who are not in crypto, they just kind of associate the entire umbrella category of NFTs with a Bored Ape.
I think that's going to change.
What do you make of that? And will it change?
Yeah, change over time. I think part of it is you can look at the way, and this is going back to some of the first things we were talking about in the podcast, the idea that like every time there's a new emerging technology, it gets shit on. It's just par for the course, right? But the other aspect of this, you can kind of look at this from the lens of a gamer, right? And for the past year and a half, gamers have been shitting on NFTs, which is very surprising to me. And part of it is that you have these big gaming companies come out and say we're not going to do anything in NFTs. I can tell you for a fact that every AAA gaming studio right now has a Web3 division, right? So they are quickly changing their tune because they see what's going to happen, right? Okay, so to give you this an example, you had Riot last year made $2 billion selling skins, just cosmetics in League of Legends. Then you have Epic, and just on Fortnite alone, made $4 billion selling cosmetics in Fortnite, right? And all of that value is going in, none of it's coming back out. Anyone who's played an MMORPG understands the value of digital scarcity, understands that digital online connections have meaning, right? And so if you've grinded your ass off for that sword or that item or that character, or you've won it, or you've just gotten lucky or whatever it is you rolled and you got it, you know how special that item is to you, right? Especially if you've dedicated years of your life to that thing. It's as simple, I think, in terms of changing the sort of perception of the masses of just waiting for that part of the industry to shift. And so when gamers start to get involved, I think that's when you're going to see this next cascade. I think the next big wave, or the next major wave in NFTs will center around gaming. And you're going to start to see people going, oh, wait a minute, I own this sword and I can just sell it and trade it and make money. And it's and I don't need anyone's permission for the first time basically ever. I think that's going to change a lot of hearts and minds.
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that a little bit. There's that old Satoshi Nakamoto quote from a forum where he responds saying, if you don't believe it or don't understand, sorry, I don't have the time to explain it to you. I think for a while there, that feels like the position that a lot of the NFT industry was taking towards things. That's certainly not the position that we want to take. I think that we feel very confident that this is just better for consumers. Once we figure out the on-ramps, once we figure out the safety and security and onboarding and education here, that this is just not the same kind of sunk cost systems that people are used to, and that there's a whole lot of power to that. And already, obviously, some of the biggest narratives of the past year have been almost completely solved, and it's resulted in a whisper, and where last year a lot of people wanted to talk about the potential environmental effects of the Ethereum blockchain. Here we are a month and a half out from, or less than that, I think, of the Ethereum merge, and everything now is 99.95% more environmentally friendly than it was. And I think as we have more and more unlocks along these lines, that I think it'll lead a tidal wave of interest that will.
And I think more and more luxury brands are going to enter the space. We're seeing it. We saw with Tiffany's, with CryptoPunks, and then not exactly a luxury brand, but an incredible brand, Adidas, the way they entered the space. I think that's going to onboard a ton of new people. I think part of the problem, right, is that people will look at a Bored Ape and they'll go, why would anyone buy, or just an NFT in general, a profile picture especially, and go, why would I spend any money on this? It's just a JPEG or it's just a PNG, actually, to be more technically accurate, right? And it's why would I spend any money on a digital asset? Well, again, the gamer side, I think that's going to solve itself, right? Because that's going to be a massive community who's already going to intuitively understand once they see the utility. But for the broader masses, I think it's a little bit about education, right? They don't know, perhaps, that when you buy a Bored Ape, you get access to a club, and you don't understand the sort of social connections that might improve, or that it might give you access to in real life events that are pretty freaking cool, or that it might give you access to exclusive merch drops from luxury brands, or that might give you access to mobile games and competitions and all kinds of invite-only discords and all kinds of opportunities that come with it, right? There's this whole world of utility that we at Yuga Labs, for instance, have been building out for the past, almost 2 years. And I don't know if they understand that piece of the puzzle. They might not also understand the piece of the puzzle that the intellectual property is attached to that NFT, right? And that you can then commercialize that ape. And we've seen apes who've made a tremendous amount of money, in fact, just from commercializing their ape and being very creative with it. Again, you see guys like Snoop Dogg and his son creating entire brands of ice creams and cheeseburgers centered around the intellectual property of their Bored Ape. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, and that's a little difficult to like communicate very succinctly to someone who's outside the space going, why would I buy a JPEG for any amount of money, let alone a great amount of money?
You guys must have personal friends or family who've literally asked you that point blank. Like, I don't
Interestingly enough, not after a certain point, because if they're friends or family, they've investigated what we're actually doing here, and they're like, oh man, this is so cool. Most of the time, they're just like, man, I wish I knew about this space sooner, because this is interesting. Like the moment you kind of learn what's actually going on from utility side in NFTs, I think that's the moment that people are like, oh, I didn't understand the full smorgasbord of what was available here. I just thought this was just about JPEGs. Not to say there's anything wrong with just digital art. That's a whole other side of it that I think is fascinating and very cool. And provenance is a meaningful thing here. But to me, the thing that I'm most interested in is the online digital community and social aspect, and then also how we can bridge the digital physical.
Yeah, something I'm curious about when it comes to sort of licensing and Bored Apes is there are so many different ape-based brands now, but do you think people actually want to wear someone else's ape as a shirt or as a hat? This is sort of some things that I've wondered, because we do see apes putting their ape on water or putting it on a hat or putting on a shirt. But when I think about the NFTs that I own, I kind of want to rep them just because I own them. But I don't really think that I would necessarily want to wear someone else's NFT. So I'm curious to hear either of your thoughts on that, and do people, is the relationship surrounding NFTs going to change? Do you think people want to wear someone else's NFT as a hat, for example?
But it's very dependent, right? Just because they own the ape doesn't necessarily mean it's a marketable thing, right? I think it depends on what kind of work and effort they put into it, right? Snoop Dogg is a perfect example, right? He's building an entire brand around his ape. And there's an entire world being created there. We've seen Timbaland do the same thing with his ape, right? He's creating an entire world around his ape. And I think, it really depends. It's like any intellectual property. Just because you have a cartoon character of something doesn't necessarily mean it's marketable. But if you build a world around it, if you are creative, there's a bunch of brands that are now doing stuff with their apes where I personally am like, wow, that looks amazing. I want to buy that sweater. I want to buy that hoodie. I want to buy that beanie or whatever it is. And, it's not my ape. I think it's just fucking cool.
Yeah, there's really sick, sweaters that were being sold at Fred Siegel a couple of weeks ago that were incredibly classy. I snagged a $500 cardigan with somebody else's.
Yeah, was it cashmere? I mean, it looked amazing. It looked
really
like,
cool.
Yeah, I really,
I'm waiting for it.
It really looked really cool.
Yeah. What do you guys make of speaking of like luxury items at Apes? It kind of seems like apes have become status symbols in a way for celebrities, and then everybody's making it their profile picture and sort of using it as like a digital flex. Is that what you guys think, or do you just think that celebrities just are interested in the club and that's why they're getting involved? Or is it some kind of mixture where people are sort of buying in because they're like, oh, this is the next like digital version of a Louis Vuitton bag, or this is sort of a way that I can virtually signify that I'm a part of something that is exclusive?
I think it's definitely a mixture. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
I wouldn't say it was any one thing. I think there's a lot of power when people understand, what NFTs are really good for, which is authenticity, scarcity, and then how is that manifesting itself? And for us, it's like, the scarcity of being a member of this club and the kind of reception and love and community that forms around that. I think it's extremely powerful. Getting to know other people in the space. This whole thing, I don't think it comes as any surprise that this was born out of COVID and became such a way for people to connect with each other in a deep way on Discord. And now it's finding more and more ways of like instantiating itself in the physical world and people making those kind of real connections that way. But I think it's a mix of things. And I think one other point I'd like to make is, while we've seen that reticence from gamers on, what an NFT is and what it might be good for, it's interesting to see how luxury brands have really leaned in and deeply understanding those aspects of like, hey, their whole business is authenticity and scarcity. And so they're very excited and just want to figure out how to do it authentically, because they know that's just as important as scarcity and authentic, their brand and all that. And that's why it's really special to see some brands like Gucci and LVMH and Tiffany's and some of, I think we saw yesterday that Rimowa is doing something now with Artifact, and that's really cool. And I think another part of what's probably attracting celebrities into the space.
Yeah, in some ways it also takes time. Like, respectfully to Apes, I kind of understand it a little more with punks because they're so old. I mean, people call them ancient. Obviously nothing in this space is ancient, but because of like when CryptoPunks date back to, I sort of see that aspect, like they've become more almost like generic symbols, but something I'm noodling on. But I want to make sure I ask you guys, there's a couple like fun type personal questions we always like to ask our guests. One is, we've been talking about NFTs. We heard about other collections and what you guys think. What about the coins? What are in your bags? I think, Greg, it's worth mentioning, your last name is Solano. So I don't know if you're a big Solana guy, but what do you guys hold in terms of crypto?
Yeah, I haven't bought any new crypto in a long time. It's usually if I was buying it with a very explicit purpose of buying an NFT, really. But prior to founding Yuga, I was coming back from not having bought anything for years. I still hold a lot of my 2017 bags. I still, there's a Ripple bag somewhere that I can't access since it was on my Coinbase wallet, or I could like withdraw it. But anyway, but my last name is Solano. And so when I saw Solana in late 2020, I bought a little bag of that and have held on to that as well.
I'm a big fan of Ethereum and ApeCoin.
Yeah.
A loyalist.
Trying to think, Kate, what else? Oh, one other thing I want to make sure I ask you guys, as writers, I asked about Snow Crash, but who do you read? What are your favorite books?
Great question. I've said this many, many times, but I think my favorite writer is David Foster Wallace, and a book called Infinite Jest in particular is my all-time favorite book. But that's, I've been saying that for like 15 years, and I probably should get a new favorite book to it. I feel like that book has all this connotation to it. It's like there's a type of like MFA writer type person who's like, really big on that, and then there's like a bunch of people who are like, fuck you for even saying that, you pretentious asshole.
It became like a punchline. I actually wrote my college thesis on DFW, but specifically on his essays, his nonfiction. And I kind of think Infinite Jest is like a little overrated, a little bit loose and baggy, but you're totally right that at some point in the last 5 or 6 years, it became like an uncool stereotype to like him. Like, oh, the intellectual, like literary white male.
I feel like it's a little unfair. What I tell people is like, it's a very long book, and there's a lot of obtuse footnotes, and yes, the first 200 to 300 pages are a little bit boring, and yes, should they have been cut? Maybe, but it's like maybe, probably
a lot of asterisks.
But it really becomes a deeply, deeply entertaining book, and the book itself is about the nature of entertainment. And I think it's very appropriate for someone in this day and age to read as it relates to sort of the addictive quality of entertainment and social media in particular. So I would recommend it to just about anybody.
Greg?
Yeah, I'm definitely not on the DFW train. That was like our first argument.
It was literally how we met.
Specifically about that. It was just, but I'd say, honestly, the thing that stuck with me the most over the past years is just Haruki Murakami, which I didn't find him until much later in life. It was actually like another one of those things. It's kind of the same as DFW. It's like if everybody's reading it and everybody loves it, then I like avoid it on purpose in order to like not have that in my I don't even want the context of it. I want to create something else. I just find it so enjoyable. And Wylie like hates it, and he's like, yeah, you're gonna read about like making, listening to jazz while making pasta, and then like something falls out of the sky, and it's like, yes, I am, and I like it.
Another
two very
author
different
that I've come
novelists.
back
Yeah.
around to. Like, I have a tattoo of him, Kurt Vonnegut. And when I was a kid, it was like, 15 years old, 13 years old, you're reading Kurt Vonnegut, it's kind of blowing your mind, right? I think it does that for most people. And, here's this like beautiful secular humanist who had gone through World War II and is just like, has a wealth of suffering and knowledge, and he's just so unbelievably funny. And so as a young person, you read him and that blows your mind. And then I got older and I was like, no, I'm more pretentious than that. I love more highfalutin stuff. That's just for kids. But it's weird. As I get older, I'm going back to him and just realizing, that was really the purest thing, just that like that message of secular humanism, coming back to that over and over again, just like being a good steward for humanity kind of thing. I don't know. It's maybe I'm just getting old and sappy, but it's like moving me quite again.
Yeah, Wylie, you have a lot of tattoos, so I have to ask, when
BAYC
tattoo?
It's been so long, and there's been so many BAYC tattoos that I almost am like, is it going to be like an albatross moment when I finally get it? Is that like, when I post that on Twitter, is that the moment where it all just comes crumbling down? It's like Garga, like he'll never change his profile picture, even though he actually doesn't like his ape. It's like...
Oh, wait. That's great. Wait, we're breaking some news here.
No, my ape is great, but I do like my mutants better. And but I'm there. We are superstitious, and so like if I change my, because even when there's obviously like Nifty Taylor and these other people like dressing up your ape, putting it in a suit, or doing these other things, I will just not do it out of pure superstition. I'm like, no, it's got to stay there forever, or I'm tempting fate.
So Greg, who owns your dream ape?
Yeah.
I like the Mohawk apes, and I like the zombies. I like the orange backgrounds. Wylie hates the orange backgrounds. I don't know that I've never like found a specific one, but like
what did you just say about me and the orange background? I don't hate the orange background. I'm pro orange background. When we first started, the biggest fight that Greg and I have had, maybe the biggest fight we've had in the 2 years that we've been working on this, was about the backgrounds. And yes, I was not the biggest proponent for brighter colored backgrounds, just FYI. I was more in favor of the muted, and we came to a middle ground where we incorporated both. But I've come to embrace the orange gang.
I already just tweeted that the BAYC co-founder hates all your apes that have an orange background.
He's great. I love. There's a zombie on the site itself that was there from day one that I think is very fucking punk rock and cool. It's got like the black T-shirt with the monkey image on it. It's with the X out eyes. I think it's a very cool zombie ape. But actually, I think my ape is my favorite ape at this point. Like it is my dream ape. It is my forever ape. I feel like I dream in like as that ape. It's like I'm Gordon Goner. I'm not really Wylie Aronow anymore.
Very early on, you were getting some pretty ridiculous offers before people even knew that was like, no, that's the founder's ape. Like, you're not going to get it. I think it was like, certain whales were like, what the hell? Why is he not accepting this thing? It's like way overboard.
No, but maybe they can get yours if you're trying to get rid of it.
He's stuck with it.
No,
the leopard spots.
This is the grail. This is
nice. Well, this will definitely be the first episode thumbnail that has NFT PFPs as the image.
That's cool.
So that'll be cool. Yeah. Really awesome. There's so much more to talk about, but we've gone long.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us. This is great.